Welcome to this Pádel. Today we have a very special guest, as usual. Diego Campos, come from Mexico, but he's living here in Miami. And we wanted to talk to him because he has a very interesting model. To me, he's the first VC fund that I meet and have a good relationship. Like we talk from time to time, we meet, and I'm trying to follow what Sunrise Capital is doing. So we have him here. We have the privilege to talk to a person that is going to fuel the paddle ecosystem and the growth in the United States and Canada. So welcome, Diego. It's my pleasure
Rosa.
to have you here.
I'm excited for the conversation. Yeah,
thanks for
I've
coming.
been looking forward for this for a few months.
Not really.
Happy to be here.
So first of all, for our audience, who is Diego? Because I know you come from tech. You're a tech professional, like a tech bro from San Francisco. No, I'm kidding. I love tech bros.
I actually never lived in San Francisco before, but yeah, I spent a lot of time there.
Okay, so what did you do before Padel?
Yeah, my majority of my background comes from SaaS, working at different tech companies across different roles, from marketing to sales and also strategic finance. And from all type of different companies, from startups to some of the larger SaaS companies like an Adobe and Salesforce across. Yeah,
I love Adobe.
It's a great company. I
had the chance to meet the founder. That he
the one that created the PDF, John. I can't remember his last name.
They gave him like an award, California Chamber, and all that, and he was super nice to me. Like I had a very deep conversation talking about why they killed Flash, like Steve Jobs was right, but we didn't want to say it. And I was like, whoa, this is like Silicon Valley history.
Yeah.
It was great. I like those things.
Yeah, they were one of the the regionals from Silicon Valley. So
totally.
Yeah, it's a good company to work for.
Wow. And how did you discover paddle?
So since I'm from Mexico, we always grew up around paddle, and there's a lot of paddle courts in Mexico. Majority of tennis clubs, they also have paddle courts. And for example, in Mexico City, a lot of apartment buildings, like amenities, they have like a paddle court, which is pretty cool. But never took it really seriously until after college. Growing up, like I played a little bit.
Because it was a game.
Because it was a game.
It was considered like a fun game.
Correct. And in Mexico, I was competing in tennis, so like tennis was my main focus. But my friends that play paddle, it was just more like social. Like they were probably drinking more than playing, which is fun. I love clubs in Mexico. They focus more on the social side around the paddle, and I think that's why we haven't seen too many like professional paddle players from Mexico yet. Like it's starting to change now, from the newer generations, and in the last 10 years or so. But that's how I got exposed to paddle. And after going back to Mexico City from after college, I realized that majority of my tennis friends, they also now they were done with college, they all starting to play paddle.
Wow!
So that's how I started playing on the weekends with them, and I was missing that competitive aspect after playing tennis for so many years that I just really got hooked into it.
But you were telling me that you came to the U.S. as a college player, like tennis player, right?
Correct.
So how is that? Because to me, it's like part of the American dream too, like a sports professional at a very early stage.
Yeah. I mean, I had a great time playing like college tennis. It was super fun. I just like more also the team aspect of college tennis versus playing compared tennis on your own, like singles or even doubles. I mean, yes, you have a partner, but it's not the same as college tennis. It's tough. It's tough to be a tennis player. It's typically more lonely compared to other sports.
There's no one to blame, like in paddle.
Exactly. There's not to blame in other sports. But yeah, I mean, obviously, at some point in tennis, I realized that, okay, yeah, you're good enough to like go to college, you can play Division I, but then, I wanted to focus on my career, right? So, towards when I was probably like around 16, I said like, at this point, I know that I'm not gonna go pro. I'm gonna focus on playing college tennis in the U.S. and then just focus on my career, right? That's how when I kind of like about 17 decided to.
But it's very smart and very focused. Like you had a great experience, but no, like broken expectations somehow.
Correct. No, yeah, very realistic, and I was always, very focused around that. And yeah, not like a big ego saying like, I'm at, because I had some friends that they went down the route and they tried to go pro, and obviously it's very hard to become a professional tennis player. So I kind of like at one point, sit down with my parents and we're like, okay, what's
the path?
What's the path forward? Let's make the best out of it, and I would do it all over again. I wouldn't change a thing.
Great.
It was an amazing experience.
And how did you go from tennis player, semi-pro, or let's say college pro, to casual paddle player, to like jump into the paddle world full time, right?
Yeah.
So there's a gap there that we want to know about, because I think it's like the parteaguas, as you say in Mexico.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of interesting because when I went back to Mexico after college for a few years, I started playing there. But then before moving to Miami, I moved to Salt Lake City for about a year to work at a startup, which at that point...
And it isn't boring? I know people that goes to Salt Lake City and like... Oof.
It's great outdoors.
Okay.
If you like skiing, hiking, but it's a tough community to really like get to know people and just build your own community. At that point when I moved there, Salt Lake City area was supposed to be like the next Silicon Valley. It was called like Silicon Slopes, and there were like 7 tech companies that they IPO, and there were unicorns that came out of Salt Lake City Valley. So work-wise, it was a good opportunity. I stopped playing paddle because there was no paddle in Salt Lake City, and there's still up to today there's no paddle in Utah. Ooh. Which I think it's a great market, and we can talk more about that because it has a very strong pickleball community and very good racket sport community with tennis. And then I moved to Miami, changed jobs, and I reconnected with some friends from tennis that were living here.
Wow.
One of them being one of my partners in the fund. After years of like maybe 10 years of not seeing each other, we reconnected and started playing paddle together at Wynwood.
Like before Pedrito's mornings and all that. Right?
before the pandemic, before you didn't have to book in advance, you can go and play the same day. So there were different times, and it was funny. At some point, we even had the same court book every Tuesday from I think it was like 6 to 7:30 for like 3 months, right? Yeah. And then we suddenly start switching, like start seeing the change of demands, what's happening in Miami specifically, of how I give credits to all the early clubs that they build that community. True. And we start seeing that change, and there's a lot of demand suddenly for paddle, and
it wasn't that obvious. Like it was a big bet.
It was a big bet. And for example, like Wynwood, I don't know if many people know this, but Wynwood Paddle, it was previously owned by some guys from Mexico that they sold it. And then, kudos to Danny and Sergio that they really exploded that club. And I think Real, obviously, it's been around for 10 years, and 10 times. Like, Paddle Life has been around for a while. Yeah. But, that was all. That was all, yeah. Those early clubs they did, they went through the hard years of building that community. Yeah. And as we started seeing this change, that it was not only like Latin people playing paddle, also people from the US starting to fall in love with sports, that we wanted to get involved, right? We saw the potential, we look at the numbers of the business, it make a lot of sense from that angle as well, where we first started doing some angel investments in the ecosystem. For example, we invested...
For curiosity, right?
For curiosity, just to learn more, get the exposure, understand better the economics, just to understand better the programming, understand better the operation sides. For example, one of my partners, we invested in the first padel club in Toronto, in Canada. So it was cool to see how they... structure the business, how they build a community. We have a good relationship with them, and we got really good insights from that investment.
That's important.
That from then the next step was we wanted to open our own facility. Okay. So we went to that process, and
what happened? I haven't seen it yet.
No, it was 2.5 years ago. Okay. Where we went to the process of finding the land, we were gonna do a build-to-suit facility. So we had the lease signed. We raised the capital, and we were working through site plan approvals, construction approvals, and it was in the city of Sunrise.
Okay.
By Sawgrass. So I'll tell you that's where the name comes from for the font.
The question was, why is it called Sunrise Capital? So that's the
correct. So that's where it comes from. So we went to this process of, we learned a lot of like negotiating the lease. We went to the capital raise. We held that, and unfortunately we got very delayed with permitting. But we just learned a lot through the process. And at one point we were now getting involved in the ecosystem that we just had a lot of opportunity to invest, and we saw that to every operator that we talked to, it was missing this model where smart money, right? Not only they were raising money from friends and friends and family, but there was no like specialization behind any of the clubs and trying to just centralize best practices, put governance, put more like a corporate structure in a more traditional pop and mom type of industry and type of business. So we just saw that potential. We decided to, as we got delayed with permitting, which a lot of clubs in Miami area do, it happens. I think we make the tough but smart decision to say, let's put a hold on this project. We sit down with the landlord, and he originally was going to be like a standard warehouse, low ceilings. So we negotiated with him like, hey, let's do a new project, raise the ceiling because we need the specifications. So we said like, let's sit down and you can continue with your old project that was a normal warehouse, and we'll just go our own way. So he gave us back all the security deposit and all the money. So we structured it.
What you're telling is very important, because I think first, it gives you the credit. Like, you've walked the talk. You've done that before. You know where are the hydrants, the problems, the stoppers. And at the same time, when I talk to like people that want to build a club, to want to do something related to paddle, I think there's a piece missing that is kind of collective. And I wish like all the ecosystem gets together, starting with USPA, maybe like Playtomic or software, or like the brands, which is having a playbook.
Correct.
But like a brochure for authorities, because every new club in a new city is gonna have that like work or tough work of being like rushed and be like damaged by convincing what is there, explaining. So that's kind of PR or lobbying work that is going to be needed in every new city, because there's not a code, there's not a permit, there's no. Correct. So it's not just the people demanding by how to explain what's this, how it works, and that's going to help a lot to the people that want to create a club. Exactly. So we saw, to your point, that I'm glad you bring that up, because that's something very important that we're bringing to the table. It's like an operational playbook. At the end of the day, we are the only fund or investment group firm that have done specialized that have done 9 investments in paddle clubs in the US so far. And at the end of the day, yes, Playtomic and Play by Point, they have a lot of data points around bookings, but what are the ones that has the number the full
around
picture.
The whole picture of the OPEX, how long the project takes, how much, what was the CapEx to open the club, like we're putting together a playbook of best practice, and obviously it changes a lot of our market.
How much is insurance? How much does a coach get paid? Like, do you expect the coach to be also like the front desk, or to do social media, or
correct?
How do you define the role? It's not clear.
How do you make sure that you don't have high employee turnover, right?
Yeah.
So, because that's very costly, and it's a very bad experience for especially those clubs that focus more on memberships. Yeah. That you show up to the club that you've been there for 2 years, and then it's always like a new person every 2 months, every month that you have to get to know. Like, so we focus a lot on that, right? We, majority of our partners, we come from the corporate world, so we implement a lot of corporate best practice and governance into the clubs, and we work very closely with operators. Obviously, some more than others, depending on the type of help that they need. But we help through the entire process, whether that's from lease negotiation, and we look at the leases and just, based on our recommendations, on our experience, and based on what we've seen from other investments, something that they should be careful about, what to include or not include in the leases, or from bringing brands and be able to leverage our network and get better pricing for bringing certain courts or certifying coaches, right? And
that's important.
A lot of times too is like, how do I structure the business? because a lot of people
Is a pay to play? Is a membership model?
It's a membership model.
Do I add the classes so people come more?
Do I put pickleball or not?
Yeah.
How do I structure the fundraising? Right? How much of my money should I put?
Yeah.
Should I have skin in the game? Yes, you should.
Of course.
How do I raise the rest of the capital? So there's a lot of things that
you know how to do now.
That now, like it takes to open a facility, and I think people think it's easier to.
Yeah, everybody thinks it's easier.
It's like, I'll find a piece of land.
Plug.
And then plug and play is like, right? It's very different from that. And based on our experience, these 9 investments that we've done.
Yeah.
On average, each project to open a facility takes about a year and a half.
Wow.
By the time you, let's
say,
you
sign the lease until you open the club.
Correct. Like, even though, like, when you have people, for example, that we talk about, and we have been talking for 6 months to a year. For example, in Washington D.C., that they've been looking for a place for over a year to open, and it's really hard in certain markets to find that unicorn facility that has the right ceiling height, because in majority of the U.S. has to be indoors, right?
Yeah.
Has the right column spacing, and let's say the right location that is not in a very industrial area, it's going to be hard for people to get to. So by the time let's say you find all these criteria, which is very hard to find this space in the U.S. compared to other markets. Good luck convincing the landlord that doesn't know anything about paddle, that you don't have any track record, that you have signed 10 commercial leases across the U.S. So it's very hard for operators to convince the landlord without somebody backing them up as well and say, like, hey, I have this fund that has invested, has done this, so
you can double check.
You can double check, and that gives them some confidence. But still, not only convincing the landlord, in the U.S., you're competing against so many businesses that want to lease a warehouse, right? Amazon, UPS, FedEx.
That's what I was going to say. Like every time I go to a high warehouse, I feel like, oh, I love this. Well, I went to one that doesn't have air conditioning a lot, like Urban the other day. But it's going to be great once it's done, right? But just it's close to the airport. So when I place, like, even if they want to lower the prices, it's going to be very difficult. Because of the nature of the space and the location, they are competing with facilities that are dedicated to logistics.
Correct.
So every square feet or like cubicle meter, it has a price, and it's a clear price.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult to find a place that's going to be affordable, that is not going to be luxury. So if you put 12 courts, you cannot make it luxury with 12 courts. You need a big amount of people going and playing there. So I think it's one of the biggest challenges for Padel right now.
100%. Like, the real estate is the biggest challenge. And I mean, it's just the amount of spaces that fit the criteria for a Padel club, it's very hard to find.
Yeah.
And plus you have the competition of other possible tenants.
Yeah.
So it's a big barrier of entry, which we're trying to solve. And that's why we have a dedicated vehicle for acquiring real estate and developing Padel facilities.
Okay. So you want to acquire real estate place? Correct.
We're in the process. So on our second fund, we have 2 separate vehicles. One, a specific real estate fund that we are acquiring land and putting cover structure, metal frame buildings to lease out to operators. Okay. And we're also acquiring facilities that we can repurpose for paddle. It's like basketball gyms, volleyballs, that you can easily, they have the right typically ceiling height that you can adapt for paddle. So we have one specific fund for that. And then we have another one which will continue a similar thesis of the first fund, which is a growth fund. We invest about 80% of the capital into operating companies and operators. Okay. And then we'll allocate 20% into different things in the ecosystem that just complements really well the core investments of clubs.
Okay, so like to clarify a little bit, because I like to talk, you like to talk, so...
Yeah, I think I'm talking a lot then,
No, it's fine, I'm like that. So, but for the audience to understand, so Sunrise Capital is a fund. The first fund is like already closed, correct, right? So what's the amount of the first fund that is already closed, and what are the 9 investments that you did? Mm-hmm.
So the first fund was more proof of concept. We raised some money from friends and family and a few family offices from the US and UK. we closed 2.5 million, which we've done 9 deployments.
Good.
Sorry, we've done 8, and we have missing 1 deployment that's already committed. We're just working on with the bank for a loan to start the construction, because also it's a real estate component to that one. But we have 9 clubs that's, let's say, it's committed and deployed. The first one already opened in Arizona, in Tucson.
Pádel
by the Pad.
Oh, the Pad. Okay, I need to go there.
Amazing facility, really good ceiling heights, 9 pickleball courts, 7 paddle, cafeteria area, restrooms, really, really good community. Then we have Denver, which I'm very excited it's going to open this week.
Ooh.
So they just got the permits last Friday. The officially opening is on Wednesday. Excellent. So that's by Racket Social Club. We have Houston by Racket Social also that's opening this month. So we're super excited about that. And then this summer we have 2 more clubs opening. One in, so I'll go by order. The next one is June in New Jersey, is Hanover. Really, really cool project. Next to a corporate campus.
Oh, great.
So there's a lot of offices in the area, which these are going to be part of the facilities and amenities of the corporate campus, which we'll have for paddle courts and for pickleball. Then we have Chicago, which is going to be the first club downtown Chicago. Right now, the current clubs are more on the north, very far, or on the south. So this is located in the West Loop. So really, really good location. Really good concept of, if I remember correctly, the ceiling height's about 32, 5 indoor courts, a bar area with like a full cocktail, like bartender, co-working space as well.
So you're going to be like the second space, when they talk about the second, third space, like you spend the day and work from there. And
correct. That's the idea, especially the location close to downtown and a bunch of offices. I think that it's going to work really well for that particular location. And then we have LA, which is probably going to happen end of this year. That one is in an up-and-coming area of LA called Whittier, close to like the Dodger Stadium. In some of these projects, there's a real estate component to it. So in about 4 of those, we have also ownership on the real estate. And
that's it.
And then there's one more there's 2 more actually. One in Coconut Grove. We're super excited. Should open towards the end of this year. There's nothing,
No, in that area there's nothing. Like South Miami, a lot of people come here. Nothing,
So that's a lot of potential. And then the last one that we're finalizing is in Kansas City.
Oh, great.
Which, you would think, we're surprised that Kansas City was an early adopter of paddle.
Great.
There's a good group of people that started with 2 courts outdoors, and now they're working on doing their indoor facility.
And how is the second fund, like second, third fund? How is the Sunrise now VC, like really venture capital?
Yeah, so on the second fund, we are... providing capital, but also we are just same as the first one, like helping with the operations. So we are active investors, right? So obviously we expect the operators and founders to run the day-to-day, but we're there to help them out, help them with all the strategic decisions, whether, what's the right courts, what's the right turf to get to the courts, what's the right court providers, booking systems.
Like a Silicon Valley investor in that way, that when they talk about smart money, that's the smart money. The knowledge, the professionals that can help, they're going to be in-house or recommending who to hire or how to do.
So we ask for like a board seat. So we put out a structure, okay, what gets put to a vote or not. And then, they can tap into our resources for like, hey, you need to certify these coaches. We have already, okay, let's bring this consultant and then help you certify the coaches. And not only like certify the coaches, but like, let's help you like onboard the front desk staff, right? And make sure they have the right playbook to train them, how to, work the systems, how to solve customer issues.
Yeah, that knowledge between the fund, you can have like a very cross relationship between them too.
Correct. And we always tell them like, hey, there's a lot of people out there that has a lot of knowledge, but they first should tap into us, and we'll try to like solve what we can do. And if we can't, then we just bring somebody that we know already that has done it, right? Or we call to the other operator that we were investing. It's like, hey, let's go through. Let's jump on a phone. I want to bring this other person, and let's explain how
you did it and how did it go.
So like the operators also like leverage like our network of other operators that they've been going through the same thing that they've been doing, right?
So how big is this second fund?
So the second fund, we're splitting it two in the real estate and the growth fund. So it's 25 million for the real estate and then 25 million for the growth fund.
So in total it's $50 million, but it's quite clear the purpose of each of the vehicles that then they wrap together and they're like a capsule, right?
Exactly.
But they work in parallel.
Correct.
Okay, so we've been talking about like the clubs and you said like racket club. Now we listen more about like tennis courts converted into paddle. You were saying this club has X amount of pickleball courts and paddle. How is the coexistence, not just with pickleball, but also with tennis, like the racket world right now? How do you envision that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I personally, and business-wise, in several markets, I prefer that the clubs have a mix of paddle, pickleball, tennis, or just different sports. The only outlier is Miami, because and I always tell everybody, don't forecast your business plans based on what you see in Miami, because in Miami it's a different thing, right?
Miami is Miami.
Miami has different occupancy. You don't have to go to the educational phase that you have to go into new markets. And here it seems that nobody works and everybody has money and everybody plays and all time during the day. So I was, the time like, I've seen Miami, this club, it has like crazy occupancy. It's like,
forget about it.
Forget about it. Like, don't build your business based on that. So, and I forgot actually.
The relationship between
the two. In a lot of markets, I do like where pickleball is very strong to have pickleball and paddle and leverage the volume of pickleball to bring people into the club.
Good.
Now, it's not easy to convert pickleball players to paddle.
Yeah.
So that's something that people need to be aware. I think the idea out there is it's easier than actually it is, just because we're talking about different demographics, and pickleball players are used to playing certain prices for that sport, which doesn't align with paddle. So it's hard to switch that mentality. In just also, paddle can be a little more demanding than, it's more demanding than pickleball. Yeah. So it's some people just prefer to stay at pickleball and not change. But some they do. The more advanced players they tend to switch towards paddle, at least play and try it out. But I think the founders and operators, when they go into markets, they shouldn't target the pickleball players. They should target the tennis players. That's where is your sweet spot, or squash players too. We see a really good conversion from squash and racquetball players.
Totally.
That some clubs having successful bringing that community.
What's happening somehow in New York and Boston, like in other places that are colder, there are more squash players giving it a try because it's more social, different path. So it's a discovery. Same
with platform tennis in the Midwest, right? That's a great source of people that you can bring into the club. And that's also that we really like when, first of all, the operator is local in the community, has good relationship in the racket sports community, whether that's squash, whether that's tennis.
Yeah.
And we always tell them that you also need to raise some money from local people in your network, because they're going to be the ambassadors. They're going to bring a lot of people into the club as well, and preferably either from a tennis community or pickleball or etc. And also, what works really well is it's hard to find paddle coaches in the U.S. at this point that has a lot of experience in the paddle world. But I think it works great to bring some people from the tennis community, tennis coaches. Change them to paddle, certify them, train them, because they already have a lot of networking clients that they can bring into paddle. So that's something that works very well.
I'm thinking as you're talking, I look a lot to north of Miami. So when you talk about paddle and pickleball, I like to look at what's going on replay, because to me it is more like a real world test, like different demographic. But to me it has a lot of merit what Jonathan did, like betting on that, trying and creating that. And also, as you're talking, Sergio Moruno, a tennis guy that has transitioned into paddle. He's doing both in his job, but he's like pushing and in love with paddle. So finding people like him that are like amphibia, I think it's interesting because they can explain, but they also onboard a lot of people that are like him and fall in love with paddle.
Exactly. And I really like the concept of a modern country club.
Yeah.
Having this modern country club where you have a combination of tennis, paddle, and pickleball, and maybe something like you can build like a racket sport complex. I think there's a lot of potential there, and we started to see a little more of that in the pipeline of projects where some tennis clubs are struggling out there, or pickleball
well, Novak
courts
said,
too.
no, Djokovic. Yeah, it's true. So before you leave, I want to ask you two little things. First, which is like the secret thing, what would be the ratio for a court? Like the ratio, like the axis of real estate. How would you pay a month for a court that is a good price? Because I think that's the first piece of math that you need to do. Like your square feet, how much do you pay for the course? And then you do like the extras.
Correct. So that's a good question. And I think maybe everybody has a different thought on this.
I think it depends on the area too.
Depends on the area too.
You need to have like a minimal ratio somehow, right?
But at the end of the day, this is also kind of like a real estate business. If you're overpaying for your lease for an acquisition, you're gonna be fine for a few years. If you're gonna be at 50% occupancy to break even or make some money, you're okay for a few years. But what's gonna happen when there's like 20 clubs in town, right? Your margin is gonna get cut. Now that's lease that you overpay because you rushed to open because you didn't structure it correctly. Unfortunately some clubs are gonna close because they're overpaying for lease,
big risk,
and that's not good for a sport, right? So we typically try to model it out that a club should be about 20 to 25% occupancy to break even.
Okay.
So when we look at occupancy, we're looking, okay, how many hours you're operating in the day, typically from 7 to 11 p.m. Yeah. Let's look at shift of 1 hour, 1.5. So you have about 10.5 turns. So you only need to have, between 2 to 2.5, 1 hour, 1.5 slots full to break even. Because we know that besides the rent, the OPEX is very low compared to other businesses, compared to a restaurant, right? You don't need 20 people in the club to run it, right? Yeah. So besides the rent, which is the biggest expense, the OPEX tends to be quite low. So you just gotta make sure that you're not overpaying for rent. And I think 20 to 25% occupancy to break even is a ratio. More than that, we don't like to get involved.
And my last question is very practical. I'm sure we're gonna see you here more often once you start like the
I like to talk, so I can be here for 4 hours.
You're more than welcome. But it's more related to now there are not that many funds that are specialized in paddle. So I guess everybody is knocking on your doors like, hey, this is my project, like pitching you all the time. So before they knock on your door and they pitch, what's the homework they need to do? Like when they talk to you and they want to pitch the project to you or your fund, what's the right moment? Like what should they show in order to make an effective pitch?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and something that's, I don't say we struggle, but we have a lot of conversations with a lot of people that want to open a facility, right? For the first fund, we review more than 35 opportunities, and I'm talking about
like
real opportunities that already have a lease sign, they already have a project. But it depends. To be honest, we've been talking to some people that want to open a facility for 6 months, 8 months, and they don't have nothing. They don't have like the lease yet, or they don't have the spot. So we just kind of like advising them and say like, hey, when you get to that point, then we can actually commit. So we can
build the relationship.
Correct. So we advise them like, hey, this is what it should look like. We're open to that. Even I want to see the sport grow. I love like this industry. Like I jump on the call with everybody, they reach out, and happy to provide. This is typically you need a club that at least 4 courts for tournament leagues. It's just easier to as a business to scale, whatever that might be. So we have a lot of conversations. We advise them without having any commitments or anything. But for us to actually commit capital, then it needs to be certain milestones, right? You need to at least have an LOI in place with a really good path to get to the lease. Sign. If it's a real estate acquisition, then that's a different story. But once we see the path where, I understand it's challenging, right? Because in order to sign the lease, you need the capital. You need some backing.
Chicken and egg problem.
So
right.
I understand because we went through that. So it's difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So we always done like, I can sign a letter of commitment to show the landlord that, hey, you can show in the LOI, but you need to get the lease first. And then we can help like negotiating the lease and leverage our expertise on that. But typically there has to be a certain milestone, and obviously they have to do the due diligence on, okay, this is the right location because it has the right demographics, there's in the area, there's good household income, this population size, I have a relationship with maybe these businesses that want to do corporate events or whatever that might be. Like they need to really have like investment deck, put together a pro forma, which we look at so many different performance, and that's fine. Like everybody has different assumptions in there. We just want to review those ones to make sure that.
Let's say someone that already has a club in another country, maybe, right? Like that's a knowledge somehow that you cannot expose directly, but there could be a sign that knows something about the industry. Then the US is different, right?
Correct. And I think that's positive too, but I think they need to have ties to the local community. Yeah. I think that's really important, which we're not close to somebody coming from overseas.
I understand that.
To try to open a facility. Actually, I talked to several people from Europe that they want to move to the US to open clubs, and which is great.
That's fine, yeah. But you need to invest yourself in.
Correct. That's very important.
And also, you talking about this more money. Who are the operators and how they work? Like, who are the founders? Because I don't want you to live without knowing. Like, who are you? You say my partner. Like, who are like the GPs, the general partners, and then like the people that come for the team.
Sorry, I thought you were going to ask about the actual operators that we invest, more our team.
Yeah.
But I want to. Now that you ask, also mention the type of operators, which is funny enough that we've seen this trend.
Yeah.
Of the 9 investments that we've done, funny enough, none of them come from tennis or paddle.
Okay.
They're actually been just
different backgrounds.
Different backgrounds, successful people in the professional life and personal life that they just fall in love with sport, and that's something that we really like. And they're very open to work and explore, and they want to open a facility, and so that's kind of interesting to see compared to other markets, right? But now switching to our funds, we are mainly 4 general partners. One of them lives here in Miami.
Good.
His name is Santiago Nieto. Then the other 2 live in London. One of them is my brother. He also played tennis. And the other one has the same last name, Campos.
Okay.
But he's not
related.
Not related, yeah. Okay. And then he works in finance. He comes from finance.
Great.
And then we have a broad network of advisors that we work with. They advise our fund, ourselves, and also sometimes advise the clubs too. Okay. We have advisors coming from managing hedge funds. We have advisors that they have like 6 real estate funds on the commercial side, so we tap their expertise to help on the real estate side. We have advisors that come from the tennis world, and it represents like tennis professional players, and one of them works for ING that also launched the Pádel vertical. We have advisors from like Santi Garcia that used to work at Reserve at Vivora and has a lot of experience of paddle in the US. Advisors like Paddle Smash Academy, which with Julian, helping clubs with the ramp ups, certifying coaches. And I'm probably missing a few advisors.
No,
so
you don't need to mention
we work with ING a lot, like the paddle side too. Also, they have their own consulting business.
Okay, good.
Which, some of the team members ING Paddle that they launched the new vertical, they have a lot of experience in these worlds. More outside, more in Europe. Yeah. but some of them they've been opening and closing clubs in Europe for the last 20 years. So we work a lot with them to let's try to identify those red flags that we should be avoiding, because they also have that experience where we all seen what happened in Sweden, right? And we just want to make sure that we're building things for the long term. Yeah.
Yes. So Diego, I told you that I would let you leave on time. I didn't make it, but I've enjoyed this conversation a lot. I hope you can come more often once you have like more pipeline opportunities, more novelties, more like we can talk about tech and paddle and how it's transforming, which is a topic that I love. But I'm very happy to have you here.
Thank you, Rosa.
And thank you.
Thank you.